metals, materials, mammals, monsters, and mysteries, trying to link all those things together. Okay, so why did I do it? What principles am I using when we're actually addressing this? And I think overall, when I'm looking at the scriptures, so you might disagree, but the way I tend to look for is I tend to look for the first occurrence, look at the first occurrence and let it build from there, because I don't think God puts us in any deception in place. It gives us the first occurrence as a principle, and then the Spirit witnesses. We get more and more instances in which the Spirit witnesses against itself, and so we get to our conclusions of how to use words and what those words mean in the scriptures. So the Spirit witnessing is an important principle for me. And then the other one is I like to go back to the original word, see it in its context, always see it in its context, but the one plea, and this is towards the youngsters, is don't be a Strong's pedant. I think we've got a danger, is that we look up and say this is Strong's 164, and therefore it's Strong's 164 and it doesn't occur anywhere else. But actually, if you look at Strong's 163, it's pretty well the same word. 165, pretty well the same word. You know, Greek and Hebrew, they're very like that. We've got words which we do in English. We coin words, we extend words. When we're looking for words and looking at concordance, please, let's stretch ourselves in the concordance. Look either side for the parallel words. For example, horns. The word horn only occurs in Daniel as it's specifically said and used there. But the horn, when you see it in the context, it's the horn on a ram, on a goat, etc. And when you see the horn on the ram or the goat outside, it's obvious it's the same word. It's just the word has just got one slight change in Strong's. It's pretty well the same. So let's not be too pedantic. And that applies to me then about the interpretation. I'm not trying to be pedantic. All I'm putting across is I'm trying to look at things, we get to conclusions, and we'll see where we go. That's the aim for tonight. So that's the principles. So metals, because Daniel chapter 2, you know Daniel chapter 2, but let's just go back to the principles of gold. The first occurrence of gold is Genesis 2, in which it's used in that instance. And overall, when you look at the word gold and build on it, it's a value. Gold is used of having a value. It's been used overall. Take your own time with the concordance afterwards. Used in the context of the tabernacle, used around gold, about the Elohim were made of pure gold. The Elohim of gold, it's called. There are 5 different words for gold, by the way, and that just shows how, you know, gold is gold to us, but it's like snow's got 50 different words to somebody who lives up there. 5 different words for gold. Psalm 117 brings you then a more spiritual analysis of gold. Therefore I love your commandments more than gold, yes, more than fine gold. And leaping into an interpretation, gold tends to have, here's another one. And gold, though, we've got to bear in mind, gold is not only used in terms of the purity of the Elohim, but it's also used of people's greed and as people produce things, and it's their work. So Corinthians, now if anyone builds on this foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, straw, each one's work will become clear, for the day will declare it, it will be revealed by fire, and the fire will test each one's work. So gold is something which we produce. We can either produce something of value, of gold, and less value, silver. One of those interesting things, gold's a soft metal. It's very malleable in comparison to the hardness of others. So it's the key value of gold over silver is that it rusts at a lower rate, and so therefore its value is retained longer, as well as it's more rare. But it's rare material. Ooh. Yeah, silver then. Silver, again, first occurrence, it's of value and it's about money, it's about being associated with gold. But overall, if we try and leap steps, silver seems to be talking about atonement in terms of silver was used to atone. It's the word kasef there in silver. Children of Israel would appoint for the service of the tabernacle, maybe a memorial unto the children of Israel, Lord, to make an atonement for the souls. So an interpretation, but we'll get to that in a minute, is that silver is linking to atonement. And brass then drops. Brass then drops quite significantly in A, value, and B, significance. In terms of the feature of brass is that it's a red material, red metal. It's the first red metal rather than the shiny, valuable one. So it's a baser material. And what's also interesting, whilst it's a baser material, the first instance of the word brass is talking about Zillah who bare Tubal Cain. tubal Cain of Cain, first instance of brass, is being used in the context of a negative person, Cain standing up against God, rather than those people standing up for God. And what was tubal Cain? He was an artificer in brass and in iron. So the first instances, you get gold and silver being of value, but then you get tubal Cain, brass and iron, being almost in the different camp, and there seems to be a slight separation between the two. Also used in the tabernacle and in the serpent. And if you've got time, you probably know it yourself in the tabernacle, how that the entrance to the tabernacle and the court of the Gentile, the entrance to the tabernacle and the outer court, very brassy, moving towards silver, and as you move towards the middle, it's there getting very silvery, moving towards pure gold, and gold in the centre. So as closer as you get to the Holy of Holies, so the value of the material actually gets more valuable, more rare, as you're getting closer to the presence of God. Conclusions. There you go. There's just an instance of how brass was being used in the context of being blasting, mildew, inflammation, burning. And what happened as a result of those people who were standing up against God, what was going to happen over them was that they were going to be basically in a coffin seeing nothing but red brass above and iron underneath. So no access directly to God. So rough analogies that you get to in colours, which in metals, first part of what we're doing, is that you've got this progression of, we start off in a sinful state, we start off in a state of brass, and then through the redemption of Christ, we then come to God, who is the symbol of purity in there. So there's this silver is the mediator, it's in the middle between sin and between the purity of God. Interesting, that then follows the same thing that you get going on with the colours of the materials in the tabernacle, how that you've got the red materials tend to relate to sin, and the blue tends to result to the heavenliness, the righteousness, the purity that exists with God, looking up towards God. And in between the two is the mix of blue and red, i.e. purple, which is the colour of the King, which is the colour of the Christ, which is the colour of redemption. And so the metals and the materials tend to have this similar theme that we can take. So that's just the metals as a context for how we actually get into looking at Daniel's 2, 7, 8, etc. So when we look at Daniel's 2, 7 and 8, we know that the head was the head of gold, which we know from Daniel 2 that said, "Thou, Nebuchadnezzar, art that head of gold." What's the very first thing that Nebuchadnezzar then does in the next chapter? He then sets up an image totally of gold. Thing I'd never really thought about before then was that is in the instance of Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego, all in the instance of the fiery furnace. What was the fiery furnace there for? I reckon it was therefore to produce the image of gold. So the fiery furnace was there as Nebuchadnezzar's rebellion against God. I will create my own image, and it was his part of his power. Makes more sense then that Nebuchadnezzar is saying, out of my might, I'm going to stand up against God. I'm going to create my image, in my own image, full, all the way gold, head to feet. And when Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego wouldn't bow down, what were they going to do? Put into place of his ultimate power, stoke it up 7 towns. He was showing his power. It was direct rebellion when he was putting Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego into the fiery furnace. And then God protected them in that instance. Even more important when you think of it that way. Just consolidating red a little bit more. First instance of red. So, and the first of the two, Esau and Jacob, came out red all over like a hairy garment, and they called his name Esau, red Esau. But then afterwards, Esau says, Jacob, feed me with the same red pottage, for I'm faint, therefore his name was Edom, equals red. So Edom, everything to do with red is annotated towards sin, the shedding of blood linking to sin. That's then trying to give the youngsters, giving us just the foundation then on the colours that are there. If we then look at Daniel 2, that's then how that's portrayed. So we've got the purity of the head, which we know is Nebuchadnezzar, progressing to the silver, progressing to the brass, bit of a break there, which we'll come to in terms of value against lesser value, and then iron legs, iron clay feet. So that's what we get in Daniel chapter 2. One of the things just to observe at this point in time that's important to me is this bit about Deuteronomy, the proof of the prophet. And why are we going to accept Daniel 2? It's because Daniel 2 inside it has got the proof of the prophet. The Spirit is witnessing at that point in time that Daniel's words were true. Okay, the next chapter when we look to, I find 7 quite a complicated one. What's the jump and what goes on in between? Because when we look at chapter 7 when we look at chapter 5, it's about Belshazzar, right? So chapter 5 is about Belshazzar, and then chapter 6 is about Darius, who's a bit later, and then chapter 7 is back to Belshazzar. So when you look, what tends to happen is we've got Daniel is split between the histories, Daniel's 2 to 6, and then the prophecies going 7 on through to the rest of the chapter, which is a strange thing. Why is Daniel chunked up this way? Just for the context, some of us have been here from previous studies. Let's just quickly go through what has gone on between 2 and 7, and what are the key messages that God is giving us from his word in between 2 and 7. So these are the main events that go on between Daniel chapters 2 and 7. We've got the image of gold, and we've got the fiery furnace. Then we've got a lesson, and the lesson that we're getting from those is 3:28. Now, throat sore, brains addled. What I'm going to do is I'm just wondering if, Ken, could you take the first reading? Could you take 3:28? And as I shout out, next one, if you're happy to do it, if you read it out as we go around. But Ken, let's remind ourselves of the learning from Daniel 3:28.
Then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who hath sent his angel and delivered his servants that trusted in him, and have changed the king's word and yielded their bodies, that they might not serve nor worship any god except their own God.
Thank you. So the message from that one was about rebellion. So Daniel, the learning that we're getting from Daniel chapter 2, we got this image, we get the rebellion in chapter 3, and the learning is don't, God is in control. We then get the next prophecy of the banded tree, which, interestingly, the banded tree, if you think about it, roots underneath the ground, tree reaching above the ground, but that which is above the ground gets chopped off and just is banded by brass and iron, back down to being banded by the baser metals that are holding it and therefore constraining it from growing any higher. What's the learnings then from Daniel? Can we just have chapter 4, verse 17, Brett, please? Are you happy to do Tish or on to Pat?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
17. This
Yes,
matter
please.
is by the decree of the watchers and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will, and setteth up over it the basest of men.
Okay, thank you. So the message from that one is back down to that people alive must respect God and realise that he rules in the kingdoms of men. So that's interesting. All this is about rulership. A lot of this is coming about lessons about kingdoms, about service, about following God. Next thing that happens to Nebuchadnezzar is that he then goes through this learning in which he's made into a beast, and he goes through a beast for 7 years. And the learning from that is Daniel 4, verse 25. Pat, please.
They shall drive thee from men, and thy dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field, and they shall make thee to eat grass as oxen. They shall wet thee with the dew of heaven, and 7 times shall pass over thee, till thou know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will.
So I'm beginning to see, thank you, Daniel's going in a context here, isn't it? So the events of chapters 2, chapters 3, chapter 4 are all linking to lessons about the kingdoms of men. There's an underlying theme about God and the kingdom of men coming through here. Chapter 5, Belshazzar, and what's the learnings for Belshazzar? Chapter 5, verses 26, 27, please, Ruth.
This is the interpretation of the thing. Neither God hath numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Tycho, thou art weighed in the balances and art found wanting.
Thank you. So it's again, isn't it? It's about kingdom. And so each of these chapters are coming out with a lesson about the kingdom. Then the next thing is we jump from Belshazzar onto Darius, where we've got the instance of the lions. And the learning for that one is 6, 26 and 27, please, Matt.
I make a decree that in every dominion of my kingdom men tremble and fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God and steadfast forever. And his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall be even unto the end. He delivereth and rescueth, and he worketh signs and wonders in heaven and in earth, who hath delivered Daniel from the power of the lions.
Thank you. So again, it's all about kingdoms, God. There's a consistency, which I can't say I've really noticed before until you step back and look at it this way. So therefore, that's why there's a break. We're being given messages, and if you skim read it, you can see this. Generally, this is God actually passing on messages about who is in control. And then having established that, sorry, that explains why 7 is out of order to me. He then moves on, and we've got chapter 7 and chapter 8. And when you look at 7 and 8, you find that each of them have got a degree of the proof of the prophet against God. It's actually saying, listen to me and why. Have I got it on this one? Because chapter 7 talks one of them that stood by. So there's an angelic presence in chapter 7 to make us again listen and to accept the Spirit witness. And chapter 8, it's got Gabriel. I meant to look at what Gabriel means, because I think it's probably what Gabriel means rather than... No, I didn't try to write it down. So again, you've got an angelic presence actually reinforcing. So what we're being told is, lesson, God in control, and then God through the angel passing on messages for us to listen to. Overall then, the theme we get from 2, 7 and 8 is there's a land in chapter 2, river in chapter 8. We know that Nebuchadnezzar is the gold head, so we're told that, so that becomes fact that we can work from. And the key things we get from Daniel chapter 8, there's a ram that has 2 horns broken, he-goat has a notable horn broken, then there are 4 notable horns, a little horn from one horn, the sanctuary is cast down 200-300 days. So that roughly is the key things that are going on inside Daniel chapter 8. But let's try and lay it back inside. We're told inside Daniel 8 that the ram with 2 holes broken is Medo-Persia. We're told that the he-goat is Greece. So therefore we can take those as facts we are given. Greece at this time, you might want to know, before Philip of Macedon, was in 4 big chunky areas. So it was sequestered into, Greece was really, it was Macedon up in the north, and then you've got Sparta down in the Middle West. Then you've got Athens, which is where it was more the cultural area, and Thrace. And Thrace is actually quite important because Thrace was quite important. Thessalonica is in Thrace. It was the gateway to the east. And so you couldn't actually get to the east without going through Thrace. After Philip of Macedon, you then get Alexander, we know, and we know that the image breaks into 4 parts. These are the 4 parts that then we find you can actually see from history that it broke into. So afterwards, Macedonia, rather than Greece, was the major area, and that was given to a chap called Antigonus. Then Asia, which we now say is Asia Minor, includes Turkey. Turkey, actually, if you take Thrace, it became Thrakos, and it actually became Turkey, and it moved over the water. The origin of Turkey is Thrace. It was given to Lysimachus, Syria and Egypt. So these are the 4 main areas afterwards. So it grew in 4, split up into 4 areas. These are the 4 generals after Alexander. Just an interesting way in which people start to then see about the 4 notable horns. So Greece started as one, it broke into the 4 notable horns. These could be the 4 areas, because we know it's Greece and there's the evidence around it. So you get Philip of Macedon, and he conquered Sparta and Athens south. The last bit he then conquered was Thrace. So therefore, when you've got the belly and thighs, is that Macedonia and Thrace? Don't know for sure. But what definitely happened when you get to Alexander is that you get the major parts was Macedonia was in the west, and all of these then were the eastern part of the empire that was taken over by the 4 generals afterwards. So we're getting history beginning to align itself to the next thing we're given. These are facts, these are new events. How do they tie up going backwards into the other chapters? We'll skip on that. So if we then follow Daniel 2 down, we got the brass, we got the grease, we got the four notable horns. They should tie up against the iron legs and the iron feet in clay. But this is still part of the Grecian. Are the two the same? Probably not. The suggestion most overall is that we can see that what happened is Alexander, four notable horns, went to Greece, and then early Rome took over. What's really interesting then when you look at early Rome taking over, Greece was now very spread. So when Rome conquered Greece, it was automatically into two areas. When you look carefully at it, Rome was always an east and a west. And it was always very east and west right from the start, which fits belly and thighs, two legs going down. So personally, I think that the Rome is the two legs. You've got the east and the west going all the way down. And the major theme, when you look, is about east and west. Let's see how Scripture validates against it. The next thing that happens in Daniel 8 is you've got a little horn from one thorn. Don't get that yet. But this sort of ties up. That's the premise. Daniel 8 verse 9, and out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great towards the south, towards the east, and towards the present land. So here's this little horn which Luke read for us, and where does that little horn rise? That's a question that we can cover in discussion. When does it rise? What does it mean? What does it do? Interested? Okay. So we've got this premise around the iron legs. Let's see how the scriptures then tie up against the scriptures. Because what we get introduced in Daniel 7 is we get sea with river, you get a lion with plucked wings, you get a bear, you get a leopard, unusual animal, and you get iron teeth. So what you've got is you've got iron legs going to iron clay feet, linking to Daniel chapter 7. So there's definitely a link there which you need to look at. The precursor to the iron teeth is the leopard, and does the leopard then tie back to the belly and brass? So an implication by looking at it this way is that the leopard could be Greece. That's just an implication as you start working through. What we do know is the lion, the head of the lion is the gold head. So we got evidence of that tying up. What we also know, well, no, we don't know this, but by reputation, Belshazzar was eaten by a bear. So he was taken out by a bear, is just how he was supposed to die. And we know the bit about the bear having two sides and being a connection to the Medo-Persia. So that's beginning to tie up. And then the leopard is a strange one, because if you take leopard skins, they're actually Africa. It's quite an unusual animal. So why do you actually link leopard into Greece? Doesn't immediately become logical. Here's why I think the lion ties back to the head. If you look at the first image, Daniel 7, the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings, beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. What did we just read in chapters 5 and 6, Daniel? That Nebuchadnezzar just went through exactly that. Nebuchadnezzar was a beast, and then he was then lifted up from the heart, and his mind changed from being a beast to change to being a man. So I think that's given us a connection, connecting Nebuchadnezzar as the first one as a lion back to Nebuchadnezzar, you are the gold head. What is he told in Daniel 4? Let his heart be changed from a man's, let a beast's heart be given to him, and let 7 times pass over him. So Nebuchadnezzar was given that beast's nature and then was made to stand on the feet. So that's additional detail given to us to consolidate confidence that this is definitely talking about Nebuchadnezzar, I would suggest. The lion was then plucked with eagle's wings. And what happened? The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings, and I beheld the wings thereof was plucked and it was lifted up. So what happened to Nebuchadnezzar? The same hour as the thing fulfilled upon Nebuchadnezzar, he was driven from men and did eat grass as oxen. His body was wet with the dew of heaven, till hairs were grown like eagle's feathers. So again, there's these allusions that are coming out about Nebuchadnezzar with gold, with eagles, seems to be connecting all the way through. That means I think you can see that this idea of lion and gold is Nebuchadnezzar. Medo-Persia, Greece. So what I think is quite beautiful when you start looking at it this way is you can see how Daniel's 2, 7 and 8 give you this overall theme, and we can have confidence that we can see how these things start to integrate. But it's a bit strange if we do this. Now, can we go to Revelation 17 now? Because like Daniel 7 was confusing. If we just go to Revelation 17. Because what we've been picking up really is that 2, 7 and 8 is an evolving nature of something going on. It's the 4 beasts. 2, 7 and 8, it's all the same thing beginning to amplify itself. And if we look at Daniel 17, and whoever's next would it be? Like Mary, could we have 17 and could we have verses 1 through to 3, please?
And I came out of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with them, saying to me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-coloured beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10.
Thank you. So again, and by the way, if you look at verse 4, the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet decked with gold, coming out precious stones. There's this connection of gold being used in a sense of a whore rather than in a sense of purity in this instance. So 17 becomes quite confusing. But if we now try and lift it again and look from the themes that we've picked, what you get is that you get gold occurring for Daniel chapter 2, Daniel chapter 7, the lion, which we know connects, and you've got gold in Revelation 17. You've got iron legs, you've got iron teeth with brass nails in the beast, so features coming from above, and you've got the scarlet beast. So you've got these, Daniel 7 seems to help us connect to Revelation 17. Then in Revelation 17 we've got 10 horns, and we've got 10 horns in Daniel 17. We've got a little horn, and over here what we've got is we've got 7 heads, then they get taken away, and there's an 8th afterwards, so you get one that stands alone at the end. And then the other thing you get in Revelation is that you get the stone being the principle of Christ, and Revelation you get the lamb being the principle. So there's a continuity, is what I'm suggesting, between 17 and the rest of Daniel. Let's flip back to Revelation 13 and verses 1 and 2. Yes, Adrian.
And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, his seat, and great authority.
And when we see that then in the context of everything else, it really starts knitting together in a really quite an exciting way. Because what you've then got is we've got 10 horns, 10 horns, 10 horns, 10 horns. You've got 7 heads with 10 crowns going through 7 heads and 7 heads. This connection going on between Daniel chapter 7 through 12, 13 into 17 that progresses. So you get these connections going on. That what we just read, you've got a C and you've got a C coming out, didn't annotate that in there. You've got a lion, which connects us back all the way across all of them. We've got a bear suddenly occurring, which connects us back to Daniel 17. All of a sudden, the leopard has now got a relevance. We're giving the leopard in 7, it's because we've been told to link it together to this same thing. It's one overall evolving prophecy, I'm suggesting. And then you've got the beast, which connects all the way through with, well, the conclusion is right. So that's why that starts connecting together. And when you put, for time, we won't turn to it now. If you put 12, sorry, missed it. I was supposed to write 12 in. Yeah, if you put 12, you've got these characteristics coming in as well. So you've got this huge consistency going across all of them. So does this then make sense? Does this make sense in terms of us having a look at it? If we then connect and look for this as a single prophecy and tie it together, you'll find you've got Daniel's 4th beast, and you've got the dragon, the beast of the sea, the beast of the earth, the scarlet-coloured beast. And all of these things start coming across. And so we can see that this is all talking about how a beast has got 7 heads, 10 horns, it persecutes the saints for 1260 years, it blasphemes against God, it's judged, the saints assist destruction, and it's destroyed by flames. It's a principle of standing up against God. And I think 2, 7, 8, 12, 13, 17 is all standing up against the rebellion against God. Let's go for this one now. Thank you. So let's look at it in the context while Luke's handing this out, about Rome itself. Most of you know this, but so I'm teaching you. Okay, so sorry about that if that's the case. Rome itself was built on 7 hills. So there's a connection there between the 7 of Rome and the 7 hills that were there. The 7 hills are listed down here. So it was created, Romulus and Remus, they were fed by wolves, and Romulus killed Remus, and he killed Remus to establish his kingdom, and it was suggested around 753 BC, which is 300 years ahead of Alexander. Yeah, so Rome was created before Alexander, and then Alexander comes when they're in the 2 lakes. Next event, it was separated into 4 parts: the East, the Illyrium, the Old Turkey, Thrace, Italy, and Gaul. 390 BC. That I had to remind myself. Around about the time of Alexander, it was actually being invaded by Gaul, so it was beginning to lose in its power about the time of Alexander. So it was growing and coming through. However, it recovered from that. 100 BC, 1 people in 8 in Rome was a soldier. And it reached its height, Julius is just before, reached its height 100 AD under Trajan, when it had its biggest empire overall. So this is just about the time then of when John prophesies, if we think John prophesied AD 96, not long afterwards. This is Rome was then at its height. Then its last emperor was only 300 years afterwards, Romulus Augustulus. If ever you're looking and thinking that's a name, it's not, it's a title. The August, the person who's venerated, it's a title that's given. So interesting, it starts with somebody called Romulus and finishes with somebody called Romulus. So that's roughly the history. 7 hills, that's the name of the 7 hills. Rome had 7 systems. Those are 7 systems of rulership that it went through during its time. So 7 ties up, 10 to the 10 tie up. After Rome started disintegrating, it divided Source Britannica. It divided into those 10 different areas. That's validated Eureka. That's also validated in other books by non-Christadelphians that split and have the same opinion about where the 10 horns could be. So we can see the things are beginning to tie up. Does it tie up even more? Time of Romulus and Remus ties to Daniel 7. You've got the image of the beast. The political height in Revelation 12, I think 12 and 13 are absolutely pivotal because it's making a change between the pagan political power. Because what happens during 12 and 13 is that the crowns pass. The crowns pass from heads to horns, horns to heads, horns to heads. No, heads to horns. It passes from the heads to the horns. So it passes from the 7 hills of Rome out to those 10 areas. It's beginning to show that the influence is moving. Pivotal event around this time is Constantine. Constantine born in the east. So all the power up to this date had been in the political power, had all been in the west. But Constantine, what came from the east himself, and he lived in that area, and he converted Byzantium into Constantinople. And then he had in that area was when he then put in place the religious political power, which lasts until Revelation 17. Revelation 17 is when then the religious political power is overthrown. How does that tie up? First Pope, we debate, could be Pope Victor I. It's interesting when you go back and you look, is that he's the first person who's named a Pope, but Rome definitely, they were providing influence when you look back at the histories, but they were providing influence about all the other Christian denominations around in the Roman world at the time. AD 380, this is the time of Constantine, that's when Christianity became the state religion, Edict of Thessalonica and Thrace, that's that area. Pope Gregory, then remember I said 400 odd, the last Roman Empire, then there was a chasm, there was a gap, and then that's when Gregory stepped in and provided a degree of stability and guidance and leadership, about AD 540, and it was just providing stability, but it slowly grew until the papacy then had such political power until the 15th century, when the Ottomans then captured the Eastern Empire in terms of Constantinople. So it starts then shrinking until 1870, Victor Emmanuel seizes Rome from the Pope's control. And that, I keep on forgetting about that, is that's only 1870, you know. It was a complete power until not that far away, and then the Lateran Treaty made the Vatican City an independent state. If we then tie that back with you, where you're going with the part arm, part feet, what you've got is, if the legs are solid Rome all the way through, the legs are solid Rome until you get to this point, and it's only afterwards, 1870, is that the power is then passing in across many people, and that sort of makes sense with democracy we've got at the moment. It's a mixture of people who are definitely Romanic and following the influence of Rome, and those who are standing up against it, the clay. So implication, don't know, still thinking about it, is that the iron, part clay, could be deemed as only actually starting as recently as 1870. This is the way I'm suggesting I see it, is that between AD 189 and 1890, Revelation 12, there appeared another wonder in heaven, behold, a red dragon, still a beast, 7 heads, 10 horns, crowns upon his heads. So political Rome at its peak, declining until its political power went until, that's 1890. But what grew from 189, that Pope Victor, whatever his name was, slowly religious Rome's influence grew and grew and grew during this time when it was having a degree of political and religious, until it then finished, and then it became, in effect, a non-political joke. But it changed at 1890 when it was recognised as having no power other than in its own Vatican state. So I think the crown's passing ties up. I think it ties up. We give Revelation 12 and 13 to see how the crowns on the head pass to the crowns on the horns, passes out to the 10 crowns, passes out to the nations that still have subservience to the beast, that still have subservience to Rome. That's a repeat. Revelation 17, come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, the inhabitants of earth made drunk with wine of the fornication. So he carried me away in the spiritual wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting upon a scarlet-coloured beast, full of the names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. But Revelation 17 has still got those characteristics coming around, so it's still part of the same evolving prophecy. Very quickly then, how does that provide context if you look at Revelation in this way? The seals, if you look what happened in the seals, is the seals finish with Constantine replacing paganism by Christianity. So the context of the seals is Catholicism becomes a state religion. You then move around and you get the next chunk about the trumpets, and the trumpets actually is about the decline of the Western and Eastern political Rome. The Goths, etc., crashing out the western part, the Saracens taking out the eastern part, and eventually the horsemen taking out the eastern part. So the horns and the trumpets are all about the political decline, I would suggest, and then the viols are about then the decline of the religious Rome, the religious power through the French Revolution, being potentially the Three Frogs, the naval battles, and Napoleon slowly. Then the key thing going through is that the Pope gets taken in prison at this time. So it sort of follows this same progression. So Revelation now is sort of in a context of why 12, 13 and 17 are there. And it's showing you this idea that's going through. It's that Catholicism grows, declines politically, still there, Babylon is fallen, and then leading to the fall of Babylon in chapter 17 and 18, Christ's reign begins. Look at it another way. So what we've got in Daniel, we've got the beast beginning, and in Daniel 7 we've got political pagan Rome as being the first beast that's coming. Revelation then gives us this picture of the beast then as it transforms towards the end, leading immediately to Christ's reign beginning. And what's the beginning of Daniel chapter 2? Given by Daniel prophet, given at the time, Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon, you are this head of God, finishing with Scarlet Woman, Babylon is falling. It's like the rise and fall of Babylon. It's the image from Daniel 2 being shown and being smashed over a mega timescale as opposed to the macro timescale for just 2 in isolation. So that's the slide for all of them. The bit that we haven't got to, and we still isn't there, is, well, what about this little 8th horn? Where does that fit? Don't know. I find that interesting. But what's interesting is that little 8th horn is fixing back to that one horn that spoke great blasphemies that was there before. We are out of time, so I won't take the learnings, but all of the learnings from 12, 13, 17 are actually all about rebellion of kingdoms again. So it's carrying on with the same message. It's about the beast rebelling, it's about the dragon rebelling, and it's about the final rebellion. One interesting thing, I always wrote down that the beast spoke through the voice of the whore. I can't find that. The beast spoke, the whore doesn't actually speak, I think. You'll probably prove me wrong in discussion. But I don't see that the whore actually speaks. What does the whore do? The whore is the whore. And so it's actually, she's the symbol of immorality against. And she isn't the beast, she is just part of the behaviours of the beast, I would suggest. If you look at it, she doesn't speak, my perception. But the key thing, trying to finish on the positive, is that these things are all smashed together. The events are all there. And the next event, though, is that we see heaven opened. And I saw heaven opened, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat upon it was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he doth judge and make war. And so this is Babylon is fallen. His eyes were as a flame of fire, and his head were many crowns. He had a name written that no man knew but he himself. He was clothed with vesture dipped with blood. His name is called the Word of God. The armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses, clothed in fine linen, white and clean. Out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, and with it he should smite the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron, and he treadeth the winepresses of the fierceness of the wrath of Almighty God, and hath on his vesture, as opposed to Babylon the Great, Babylon is falling, has on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So the purpose for tonight was to try to get 2, 7 and 8 so you could see the connections, and then flowing through, I would suggest, into how you can see that gives us the whole revelation in the context of the symbols have all been fulfilled. We're in the time, I would suggest, is that when that 7th horn was taken, 1870, the 8th is the state we're in now. It is the little voice that's speaking great blasphemies that's got no political influence. And I think in 1870, that's potentially when the 7 horns, the little horn, Daniel 7 is there, and that's where we're at the moment, was the influence that is still coming through, that quiet influence. But it's not just, I would suggest, the influence of Rome, it's Babylon. It's got that spirit of, right back to the start, sugarcane, artificer in brass. It's the spirit of Babylon from sons of God, daughters of men, the whole of the scriptures standing up and saying it's people who stand up against God. So Babylon is about the spirit of rebellion against God. And that's what I think the little horn is the time now in which we're a time of people who are either doing it for religious or for pseudo-religious or for a-religious purposes, standing up against God and speaking the words of blasphemy against God. So I suggest it makes sense to me. So that's what I wanted to achieve tonight. I've gone over too much in time. Thank you.
BibleTruthAndProphecy.com is a worldwide collaboration by Christadelphians to help promote the understanding of God's Word to those who are seeking the truth about the human condition and God's plan and purpose with this earth and with mankind upon it. Bible Truth and Prophecy is part of a wider set of online resources provided by Christadelphianvideo.org for establishing just how far removed the true Christian teaching of the first century apostles is from that taught by mainstream Christendom today. BibleTruthAndProphecy.com is very much a standalone website, but benefits from our vast network of sites and resources and social media. Here are just a few of the things that BibleTruthAndProphecy.com offers. We have a good number of written articles supplied to us from brothers from all over the globe. These deal with first principle issues, creation versus evolution, the inspiration of the Bible, and so much more. We have a whole section of video study series. These are studies that have been posted onto our YouTube channel, but because of the difficulty of the search feature within YouTube, we have chosen to host on Bible Truth and Prophecy. So now every video you search for within the site, you can be guaranteed that it will be of a Christadelphian nature. We also have a preaching video section where any ecclesia is invited to download and use or embed these videos within their own ecclesial websites. We also have an exhortation service where we produce 2 or 3 exhortations per week, which we then circulate to brethren and sisters in isolation. We also have an ever-growing list of approved Christadelphian sites. We also have a page of live news feeds, so you can keep up to date with all the breaking news as it happens. We also have a section for the daily readings. Each day at around midnight we publish all 3 of the daily readings, and then later on in the day we publish thought for the days, often based on all 3 portions of the daily readings. Within each daily reading post there is also a link to enable you to have the Bible chapter read to you directly. We also feature Bible in the News videos which we have produced from the Bible in the News website. We also feature Brother Don Pierce's milestone snippets, which come out approximately 3 times a week. We also feature Andy Walton's weekly World Watch, and other commentaries and analysis from other brethren on world news events. You can also subscribe to the blog and be notified of posts as they happen in real time, and also subscribe to the weekly newsletter, which is provided by Christadelphianvideo.org. Every page and post on the site has the facility to be able to leave a comment or make an observation, so please take advantage of this and let us know what you think of the site.